All right, it's a great day here at the front office. Our former chairman, now managing partner, Kevin Nagel, joins us. Kevin, thanks for being here. Man, what an exciting week it's been for Sacramento Republic.
Totally, but you already put me out to the pasture, man. Come on.
Well, I realized I was going to talk to you about that. I'm assuming the reason why they changed it to managing partner is because of the fact that Chairman Tarango's is considered chairman, and it would be chairman and chairman. Is that the reason, or what?
We haven't even really discussed those things.
Oh, really?
It's not even written down, but I'm sure we'll memorialize. It doesn't matter. Call me whatever you want.
Okay, all right. It's one of the two.
But it is a great day, and I mean I think that it's going to be really more exciting tonight.
Yes.
Because I think we're going to get a formal vote. Whether it's unanimous or not, we don't know yet, but it should be close to unanimous.
It's very exciting. Obviously, I want to take us back to the press conference. Just a great day. And really, for you, a triumphant day. It's been something you've been working on behind the scenes for such a long time. How rewarding was it to finally share the news?
Yeah, incredibly rewarding. You know, we've taken a lot of, anybody who watches social media will know that we've had some fans that have been critical, and I guess in some ways, you know, it's fair criticism, but I always remind people to say we've been really fortunate that the club has performed well over the last decade. And I think even though we had some bumps along the road in terms of we thought we were going to, in MLS, that didn't happen. I thought we had a stadium, that didn't happen. But I believe we've got the real partner right now, and I'm extremely excited. They're Sacramento community based, and I mean it's only going to get better in time.
And that's the coolest part about it, the Sacramento community base, which I want to touch on in a second. But I mean, I know you've had a lot of different people you've talked to about making this happen. And there's been things where it's been almost at the finish line, then it stops. So, I mean, it's just been a resilient process for you, for Todd. And so I imagine it was hard for you not to share this when you knew this was coming. It's got to be hard not to share it to those fans who maybe are critical of you on social media, or critical of the club, that you know this is coming, but at the same time, you can't share anything because you don't want to ruin anything.
It's been one of the tough parts is that we knew for probably the last 8 or 9 months. What really happened was I met Chairman Tarango and Chris Franklin about the same time, and it was really almost love at first sight, one of those things where you start aligning on what they want to do and what we want to do. They were local, obviously we're local, so everything came together. And I mean, I've had a lot of business partners in my lifetime. I've never felt so good about one almost immediately when we met each other. And I mean, I'm pretty critical about that, but I'm so bullish on the future of us. I'm excited.
Well, I know the roles are kind of going to be interesting as we develop. Do you guys you said you haven't really talked specifically on exactly what the roles will be going forward, but is it something you guys, do you know what your role versus what their role is going to be, or you're not worried about that?
No, the roles are really, I'm going to manage it the way we've been managing it up until now. I mean, the difference is that, you know, I used to report to myself. Now we report to what will be a board, and they have the ownership of that board. So, I mean, it's heavily, I still have a substantial interest in the club, but they're much greater. So, I mean, I don't think it really matters that we've talked about that part. I mean, if we need to make changes, we'll make changes. That won't be any difference, and I think that people will see that in time. You
mentioned that what feels different about this announcement is obviously the partnership with Wilton Rancheria with Chairman Tarango, but you mentioned that, and we saw it in the press conference, the land piece has been such an integral part in this. Does that make it where you feel like we are way further ahead than we've ever been towards this deal?
No, it does. And the reason why it does is because I've always described the sports business as sort of generational. And what you really saw were really sports teams 1.0, where they maybe owned their own arena, or they rented or leased their own arena or stadium, and they went about their business. Really 2.0, which is where we are, which is really you owned other land around it. And what you have is an opportunity to develop that. And what you're able to do is reduce the dependence on having everything move through just the stadium or arena alone. And so now what will happen is we'll be able to build, you know, mixed use businesses, also homes of different types, whether they're affordable or middle income or maybe even higher for that matter. But it allows us a lot of opportunity, which creates liquidity, cash flow. Most sports teams, just by their nature, they don't cash flow. But if you have land and other assets that are related to the club, or the enterprise that really controls it, it makes it much easier to make that organization thrive.
Interesting, interesting. So you mentioned a few moments ago the relationship with Chairman Tarango and Chris Franklin, and how just heartfelt that relationship is. How did that grow? How did that become such a good relationship? Obviously, you guys spent a lot of time together the last 8-9 months, as you mentioned. But like, what were the things that you noticed about them that you realized, oh, these are the guys I want to be in business with?
They're business entrepreneurs, and I mean, the interesting thing is, and Chairman Tarango has talked about this a lot, which I admired right away. Is really when you look at tribes, and really the genesis that they were able to, that they themselves were able to develop casinos potentially, and also sell cigarettes and sell alcohol, some other things as well. But that really became kind of the force. And their vision was far greater than that. To invest in invest in land, invest in other businesses, and invest in something like entertainment, which is what we're talking about right here. I think that was one facet, and we just clicked on that one right away. The second part is that they're they're very charity oriented. Anybody who knows me, they know that that's something that's really important to me. Is that it should be a driver. It should be you should be a reflection of your community. The community means that you're going to be involved in charities, and I think, we at the Republic have really done a great job of that, and I'm really proud when I see Todd and the team execute in that fashion. I know that they think very much the same way, so we are really aligned on that as well.
That's really, really, really interesting. And I asked Chairman Tarango, because he was on Thursday, and Chris Franklin, as Kevin mentioned, maybe you guys are gonna take a trip across the pond, a Huddersfield Town game. Any sort of plans to show them what that side of the pond looks like in terms of for soccer fandom and things?
We will do that. I mean, it was really interesting when we made the announcement last week. Social media in the UK popped up where what they did was they pasted Wilton Rancheria. Who is Wilton Rancheria? And what happened was there was a conversation that went on among the fan base on social media there about what Wilton Rancheria was, and that they were a Native American community, and really they started to sort of back channel, I should say, or they used to discuss really about what the Native American community meant to the United States. And there was some funny comments that they made, not making fun of them, but they said, we understand that the Native American community was a community that was here before
some
most
education
of America
involved,
was. And they were educating themselves. And it was really fascinating. And the last point, I think at least one person said, it looks like there were some changes and some rights that the Native American community got as a result of what happened to them over a couple hundred years. And they much the way they said we as the Brits came over to the U.S. and tried to decolonize them as the processes we were starting to build. So it was very, very interesting, fascinating to me.
That is interesting. And I think too, one of the cool things about this ownership group joining and partnering with you, as you mentioned, the local ties. We had Burkle, who was not really from here. We've had other, but the fact that these guys are from here, it just means something different, doesn't it? It just, and the fact that they've been here obviously a very, very long time. It's got to mean something. It's got to mean a little bit more just to them, because their ties are truly to the community, and now in a way to this club, and the way that those things now are coming together has got to be such an awesome thing.
The land is coming home for them.
Right.
I mean, it was their land originally. And I mean, they're in a certain way, they're buying part of it back to call it their own. But the one thing I would say, just to sort of back up on a comment you made, we had a number of potential owners that we were vetting.
Yeah.
You mentioned, at least one, but we had a few others. Some of them just didn't work out. Some wanted to take a pass. Some of them wanted to move on, but they didn't align with really sort of our Sacramento community, the philosophy that we had, within our region. So I mean, we had our chances, but really couldn't talk a lot about that,
right,
because usually you're under a confidentiality clause, and if you're doing due diligence, that's something you just could not do. But I'm excited. We've got the right partner now.
And I wanted to dive in something you just said, because fans may be seeing, because nothing has been public. Well, there's nothing going on. There's no conversations. But in fact, that hasn't been true this entire time. You, Todd, you've been working behind the scenes to find this partnership group, and that's why it's so cool to see you share it finally, is because there has been a ton of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into making this deal happen.
Yeah, there was. And I mean, lots of plane trips, lots of Zoom calls, some of them dead end, some of them not. But the fact of the matter is that if you have discussions ongoing with somebody, what do you say to somebody publicly? You can say very little.
Right.
Or if you just made 10 or 12 phone calls and had some discussions that didn't lead to anything, what do you say to somebody? And so I think to some in our community, they were very frustrated with that. And sort of interesting, I PM'd a couple of them, asking them, what do you think of the deal? And still, most of them are really naysayers. They'll say, we'll see. We've seen this thing before. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I feel very good about where we are right now. I think once we start building the stadium, I think, beginning of the new year, I think that those people will become more believers than they are. But as you know, in the world of social media, you always have a lot of naysayers.
Yeah. Well, and I think once the shovel's in the ground, I think people will come around. But it's definitely the right step. Obviously in the right direction, right? You guys feel pretty confident at that?
I think it's doable. I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of it depends upon, availability of, equipment and other types of inventory, and also what we're going to need, and our designs. All those things are, some of it's taken place, but there's a lot still to do. But I think we'll get a pretty good feel in January. But our goal is to really have it done in 24 months or less.
How much is that going to change the culture of Sacramento, the Republic, from your mindset of having a stadium that we own? We're no longer renters. We have our own place. We can control everything. How much does it change from a fan's perspective, from a city perspective?
Well, it's going to be amazing. First of all, I mean, we will, as you said, we'll own that stadium, number one. Number two, we're going to be able to have not just soccer there. We're going to be able to have a lot of other sporting events there. We're going to have a lot of other non-sporting events, because if you think about it, we only play 20 plus games a year, so that leaves for a lot of opportunity for something else. But I think to the broader question, what it really does, it doubles the downtown core area of Sacramento. Really the rail yards, and that the stadium is really the catalyst there. Even though yes, they're building Kaiser Permanente, and that is clearly needed. But the bottom line is you need something from an entertainment value down there to bring people to that area.
Sure. Beyond
just for hospitalization or medical needs, or let's say if we're still going to see what potentially could be a court there, you want to get something much bigger and broader than that. But it's going to game change that area of Sacramento.
And then how much does this announcement that you've been working on for so long inspire you for the next steps to finally get us to that opening night for when the stadium is opened, and maybe there is a Kevin Nagel a statue up front, much better than the Dwayne Wade statue in Miami.
He was unrecognizable.
He's unrecognizable. Yeah, right.
No,
but seriously, but what does that look like? How much does it inspire you to finally get this done? It's something you've been working on for so long.
Well, what we've really been working on is another championship. I mean, that's really, to me, that's what we're really going to thrive. I thought we were going to have one this year. I thought we were going to have one last year. The fact of the matter is that, I get a little defensive. We say we been in the league, I think 11 years, and or, you could say 12, and you've made the playoffs every year but one. And the funny thing about it is the one year that we didn't make the playoffs, we were actually getting ourselves ready for MLS. And so what we're doing is we kind of repositioned, redeployed what we needed, and as a result, that sort of got us, defocused on that and more on, let's look about 2 years from now when we're going to be in MLS. But the rest of the time, we've been very competitive, and as you know, we almost won an Open Cup, and we won the league title last year. We won one before that. So we've had a lot of success, but we haven't won a championship since 2014. That's really the goal in hand, because that's what really keeps the fans excited. And I mean, does that mean that you still can't have a good product? Look at the Kings. For a lot of years, we didn't make the playoffs, but we had a lot of great fan support. The organization's done a great job of really stimulating interest to come to see our team play. But I know that what will happen is if you win a championship, they will come even more so.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's funny how when you're winning and you're doing well, there's fewer complaints. The play on the field almost affects everybody, from every fan to every front office member to every single person in the community. Really,
it was. And if you remember earlier this year, I think on a Saturday night we were playing at home, the Kings were playing at home, and I believe Sac State had their game, and we were a sellout. And I think the Kings were a sellout, and I think Sac State had really strong attendance at that particular game.
Yeah.
And I mean, that tells you about the community. It tells you a couple things. One is the community can support their sports, but second of all, we've got great fans that are willing to come out and see. In fact, I want to say, was that when the Kings opening game?
I think so. It was.
I believe it was. So maybe Todd and the team worked extra hard to make sure that we had a sellout that day. But the fact of the matter is, Sacramento's a great community to support its teams, but also we need to bring them championships too.
I want to ask you a little bit more about Chairman Tarango and Chris Franklin. I'm sure you've had them as guests at a Home Republic game, right?
More than once.
More than once.
Yes.
What are they going to be like at games? Are they going to be a nervous type? Like, I asked them this question. They didn't really have a good answer for me, but what have you seen from them and how they react to certain things, certain plays on the field?
Well, they're tremendous, cheerleaders. But I mean, I would say once you own something, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
People who don't really know me, and if they only think that, look at him, he's on game day, I sit over in the corner and I'm watching the team, and I'm not very, social or very communicative. It's because I'm really watching, even though I'm not one of the coaches, I'm looking to see what are we doing right and what should we be doing that we're not doing, and so then I can, at halftime, call down, so that I can see as we sit down and we talk about needs, what are the things that we need to do, whether it's, personnel changes or, resources that we may need. And I'm really, those guys, I'll still be doing that, what I just described, but I think that they'll become much more engaged in terms of wanting to make sure that the club does the very best it can. Those are two really great guys. They're sports-minded. They love sports. They love our club. So I think it's only going to be, they're going to embrace it even more so.
It's going to be interesting because you're totally right. I would imagine, listen, obviously I'm not an owner, but I would imagine when you become an owner, it's a different mindset from when you're a fan, because you're far more invested. And you have to be focused, right? You have to be focused. So I'll be interested to see how that develops and how they proceed with their fandom. But I mean, because you still celebrate on goals, you still celebrate wins. It's just a little bit different, right?
It is a little bit different. I mean, you're right. I mean, you might, this year is probably a little bit different. But the one thing that I think we've been able to do with the Republic is that almost every single game, I know when we go into it, we're going to have a chance to win that game. Mm-hmm. There's not a question. I will say this much, and I've said this publicly. At Huddersfield, where I own the club, I've got a lot of sweaty palms, wondering what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I want to get to the point, where we're like at the Republic. But the reality is, we're gonna do a little bit of resetting this year. We'll get the guys to weigh in on what they think that we ought to do, and frankly, they've been really super. They're just saying, do it. We're really not qualified. But you want to be considerate, because if you're the majority owner of the club, you have a right to say what you want to say, and in the end, it's yours.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see how that process comes together. I want to ask, you've been with the club for a very long time now, obviously.
You making me old?
No,
I am.
Not at all.
I got my hair went from dark to gray to light to less of it.
I was telling Chairman and Chris, I said, none of us can grow a mustache as good as Kevin. So
what's going to happen is, two things. As the hair gets thinner and thinner, I'm going to grow my eyebrows out, and then also my mustache will come back a little bit too.
Curl it on the ends, maybe?
On the side, a little bit, yeah.
What's your message to some fans who maybe haven't been as interested in Sacramento Republic in a couple years? Maybe they don't like coming to games as much, but a new stadium reinterests them, reinvigorates them. What would be your message to those fans?
Well, two things. One is, I feel that, first of all, the stadium is a lot bigger than soccer, than the Republic. It's going to represent something far greater. But we're the catalyst. We're the driving force. And I think they're going to see exciting soccer. Get ready. I mean, you're going to have a couple things happen along the way. You're going to have, the World Cup come, and that's going to stimulate soccer, people's interest in soccer. They're going to take a look at their local team. They're going to see that we've got a really pretty dynamic and pretty good club that is well supported, and that you've got a community that believes in it. So some of those people who maybe chose to go to one game a year, two games a year, they will support it, I believe, even more. And I believe that, they should be looking at the future, because I believe the future is really going to be bright for us.
Oof, I got goosebumps right there. Firing me up, Mr. Kevin Nagel. Thank you so much for being here. It's an honor to have you. Excited for the vote tonight and excited for the future. And thank you again for everything you've done for the club.
Thanks, Connor. Anytime.
Thank you.